looks like we have some attendees on here. So Helen, I'll go ahead and get us started here. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our March travelogue. I'm Joe with the GSC office, and I'll be moderating it today. Thank you for tuning in on this day, St. Patrick's Day. We have a very special presentation on Ireland. Our presenter today is Helen Gallagher, who will be discussing her, well, sounds like you've spent a lifetime there, Helen. So Helen is a lifelong Chicagoan and the daughter of immigrants from Achill Island, County Mayo, Ireland. She traveled frequently as a child to Ireland, where she enjoyed its fields, strands, and social life with her siblings. Excuse me. Helen, thank you again for being here. Go ahead and take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Joe. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And I think when I was growing up here in Chicago on the north side, St. Patrick's Day was a great celebration. In my family, we were allowed to take the day off from school and go downtown to the parade. These would be some examples of vintage St. Patrick's Day cards that flew back and forth across the ocean. Some of them, a bit dated in terms of how they capture the spirit, but we certainly recognize the leprechaun, the pot of gold, the rainbow, and St. Patrick. All of those are culturally important. And, over the course of planning for this conversation with you today, I enjoyed looking at the cards. I remember as a girl, we would get special badges that were dried shamrocks. By the time the shamrocks made their way across the ocean, they were pretty desiccated, but they still meant a lot because we knew that our grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles were thinking of us in Chicago. St. Patrick's Day is in Ireland, still celebrated on the day of March 17th. If you look at all the holidays in Ireland, you'll see that similar to the US, they've been rolled into the long weekends. The most recent of the national holidays is St. Bridget's Day. I've just started learning a little bit about St. Bridget. Her feast is celebrated February 1st, but still will be rolled into what's called the bank holiday or the long weekend. St. Patrick's Day, however, is always celebrated on the 17th. And these are some examples of the kinds of cards that inspired me in preparing for today. Thinking about the island, it is the third largest island in Europe. And, it is a united island in terms of its geography. It is over the course of its history. And the map would reveal different highlights, different ways of traveling from point A to point B. And so just to kind of contextualize for you, Ireland, the whole island, is about the size of Indiana. So it really, which is fascinating in the sense that to drive north to south or east to west is deceptive in what you might think you could drive across Indiana in a couple of hours. It's pretty hard to drive from east to west in Ireland in anything less than, let's just say 5 hours if you're driving. The country, as it has developed and improved its infrastructure, it's a lot easier to get from point A to point B, but it's still a challenge. And so I guess in thinking about planning or recommending or even just armchair traveling, one of those critical decisions is where do you want to go? I've done it where I've circumnavigated the entire island. And I probably am hoping today to persuade anyone planning a trip to make some other decisions. Critical to the map is, of course, the partition in 1920 of Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. And we'll talk a little bit today as we move around about going between the two countries. It's very easy. Even though Brexit in 2016, that referendum, there was some concern about what it could mean for the border. It's an open border. And, the people of Northern Ireland actually, as UK voters, they did not vote to partition, to join Brexit. So somewhere in, what is contemporary Irish history and politics, you can imagine there's a very robust debate, always ongoing. But for our purposes today, this is the St. Patrick's Day card that inspired my conversation and planning, because a few years ago I saw it, and I think I've bought every package of them I can find, because a place that's very dear to me, Achill Island, is featured on the map of the Happy St. Patrick's Day card. Ireland is on, Achill is on the West Coast, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. All right, this is our most recent family reunion. So I started traveling to Ireland as a very small girl. 1960 was my first trip. I have no memory of it, but I know that it was the beginning of a wonderful relationship with the country, specifically with Achill. And so this is our reunion. We have one every few years. If you want to know, that's me, and that's my husband. We somehow came in. This is on the beach, and obviously the island of Ireland. You're never very far from the coast. I think I heard someone say from 70 miles, it would, between you and the coast, anywhere in the country. This is this is the house I visited, my grandparents' house in Dugert, Achill, County Mayo. And if I had my way, probably it's the only place I would know in Ireland. But in the 90s, after many trips with my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters, my husband, who joined good-naturedly, he said, I really would love to see somewhere else in Ireland. I like Achill and it's great, but could we go somewhere else? And so that is why I have the opportunity to present some of these destinations to you. This photo always gets a giggle from me, because the Cliffs of Moher, probably the most visited place in Ireland outside of Dublin. It's on the West Coast, West County Clare. And the day we took this photo, a few years ago, you can tell we were very unprepared for the sun and the heat. That is one of the challenges of visiting Ireland, is knowing what is the weather going to be like. And you must prepare for rain. It's a little like camping. I'm a camper. And so no matter what it looks like, when we're setting up our campsite, we have that first rule of camping: expect it to rain. And with that, everything works out. But we were caught, we were very surprised that we needed to go to the visitor center and buy some souvenir caps, because it was truly a bright and sunny day. Cliffs of Moher, beautiful, highly recommend them. But we will not be going into too much detail. The one thing I probably would say, when you visit there, the views, the sunset, everything about it is very memorable. Of course, it is on the West Coast. The challenge would be you could plan your day to get there, and the fog or the other circumstances of weather might make it hard to appreciate the full scope of it. Okay, just to contextualize, where is Ireland, in relationship to the rest of Europe? As I said, it's the third largest island in Europe, after the United Kingdom and Iceland. When we think about the country, the whole nation, the United Ireland, and again, not a conversation I'm here to have with you, but one that certainly deserves attention is the 32 counties. One of the things that's important about being kind of aware of how important the counties are, similar to obviously here in the US, we have our 50 United States, is that there's a strong allegiance to your county. Now, Ireland is a place, many people left it. They may have left it physically, but spiritually, socially, emotionally, culturally, it's very close to the surface for that big diaspora across the world. And the you know the village you're from, it's a little like Chicago. The parish you're from, north side, south side, those things that I grew up with, very consistent in talking about where you're from in Ireland. Both my mom and dad are from the same place, Achill Island, the largest island off the coast of Ireland. Okay, but in kind of honoring, one of the things I think an intention I would have in a travel log like this is to inspire a visit or to reconnect with the country, with the places. I've made a choice. I've made choices on your behalf, and I'm happy to explain them. But it's a small country, but there's so much to offer. And I think from what I know about people who plan their trips, one of the greatest challenges and sometimes disappointments is they bit off more than they wanted to, and we're sort of running hither and yon. And I hope to at least encourage some trip planning that is more concentrated, so there's a greater appreciation and satisfaction. We're going to start with Newgrange. So Newgrange, if I've just cut the map of Ireland in half here, I'm dealing, with just north of Dublin. And Newgrange is about an hour by car. And how you get from point A to point B in Ireland is another pretty important decision to make. I have been able to rent a car. It comes with great challenges. You probably know that the driving on the left side of the road, the narrow roads, the fact that most reasonable car rentals are for manual transmission. I am, sadly limited to automatic, but I know that all of these destinations can also be accessed with public transportation, especially between Dublin and Belfast. That there's not only easy motorways to navigate, there are trains, there are buses, and going back and forth across the border into Northern Ireland at this time is not. You won't even know. You won't even know you're doing it. The only difference is the currency in the Republic of Ireland is the euro, and in the north of Ireland is the British sterling. But in Newgrange, you're in the Republic, about an hour from Dublin. And if you're staying in Dublin, wonderful place to stay. A lot of history, culture. It's truly a world capital at this point. But you would easily get a daytime excursion to Newgrange. It's the Boyne Valley Historic Site. I am going to check my notes. I feel like this is a weird one way. I hope you're all okay out there. I'm so focused that I'm forgetting there's an audience. But Brunaboyne, this is an archaeological site, and it is in County Meath. The visitor center is available free of charge to anyone, so parking and visiting is not a problem. It's not the most visited, it's not even in the top 10 of the most visited sites, which I find fascinating. I try not to miss it every time because there's just something kind of mystical and magical about it. So as you're driving, you would this I couldn't resist putting these two photos in. This is just your typical Irish village in beautiful midsummer. I mean, everything is blooming, the sky is blue, the sun is shining, and this would be on the way to Newgrange from the motorway. This is the River Boyne. Now, again, there's a tremendous amount of ancient Irish history, pre-Celtic history. Um, I can't. I would. It would be impossible. It would be. I suffer from imposter syndrome when it comes to talking about Irish history. I don't think I'm alone in, being the daughter of immigrants, kind of appreciating a place for what it means to me in my family and what it means to me in my own appreciation and knowledge of the world. Through my husband's eyes, fortunately, I've been educated, and but it's not something that I can deliver with too much authenticity. I hope that's okay with you. Newgrange was human, constructed by humans. When you get the visitor center, the one thing that's important to know is that you can get onto the grounds, but to really get into the passage tomb itself, which is amazing, you can walk right in. And it's a little like if you go to the pyramids at Giza. I never expected that I could actually crawl into the tomb of the pharaohs. I'm not sure I like doing it. Here, it's certainly nothing as elaborate or there were. In fact, it's only recently excavated. For most of my growing up years visiting Ireland, I wouldn't have heard of it. It wouldn't have even been a place I could have visited because it was discovered. And once it was discovered, and the symbolism, the significance of these passage tombs, these are ancient passage tombs, pre-Celtic, concealed. They were concealed. So as you can see, this is not a photo we took. This was from the visitor center. This is kind of the big drama, Stonehenge, even Chicago's Stonehenge. This idea that the way these tombs were built by whoever built them, and again, it isn't even that I haven't done my homework. It's that there's still a lot of debate and discussion about how much we can know about Newgrange. But they have certainly been turned into a visitor's destination. And so when it was excavated, this archaeological site, these stones were reconstructed. They slowly but surely, as the grass had covered, the soil had covered these passage tombs. And again, it's not clear. They're built by humans. It's not clear who they were built for. There's no real agreement still right now as to were they to honor, gods, goddesses, kings, queens, who knows. But the remarkable thing is that they are built so that on the winter solstice, the sun shines directly into the passage. That's the image you saw. Again, if you ever wonder about the 40 shades of green, I think you'll see quite a few. This is a sense of why, all over Ireland, because of its climate, because of the rain, you get some gorgeous green. These are just some close-ups of the stones. And the stones at the entrance. So these are significant boulders. You can imagine the white stones were these. This is kind of an example of what it looked like when they started excavating. And as the archaeologists were able to try to do some reconstruction, those big stones are the size of a man's fist, and the boulders are massive. In preparing for this, I understood that so much of what I would be sharing is impressions and reflections and not necessarily hard-hitting factual information. I have a little bit of a sentimental story. The first time I went to Newgrange, I went with my niece, who was born on December 21st. She was the winter solstice. I'm a Sagittarius. She's the last Sagittarius. And it was really special to be there with her. And every year we have entered this lottery because it's quite the phenomenon to visit Newgrange. This is from the Irish Times just a few months ago. Thousands gather to celebrate. And sometimes the sun does shine right into the passage tomb. There's a webcam that live streams it for you if you get interested in this this place. But the answer, every time I do a little homework on Newgrange, I find out that the story has changed. And I think that tells me, and hopefully tells you, and some of you may be very knowledgeable about Ireland and about ancient people and archaeology. I am not. But what I appreciate, and I've visited it now 3 times, is just that the answers continue to be developed. They're happening. The team, the experts, those who are fascinated by this, they're doing all the work to try to understand something. And Irish history is complicated and not the nature or the scope of this conversation. But I think I learned that I of deep Irish background and affection, are in a position of not having a lot of answers about our history, is very consistent with understanding what it means to be Irish in 2026. All right, that gives you kind of a good idea of those boulders. Now here is, I'm going to move to a little more quickly. This is perhaps, one of the most famous images from Newgrange. This is you have these curbstones are highly decorated with geometric motifs. They vary in size. Not all of them have been excavated. And in fact, what we know is that were there treasures, were there human remains, there is an idea, a story, but there is not much evidence. So that remains to be, it's continuously under excavation, and it remains to be seen what anyone will discover. All right, moving on. So again, I've chosen a destination in Northern Ireland called the Giant's Causeway. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. When I was growing up, we didn't visit Northern Ireland. Well, we really didn't visit anywhere but Achill. But even in my own independent young adult years, I wouldn't have thought about going to Northern Ireland. And I remember the first time I went to Northern Ireland, I felt like I was crossing into an unknown land. And now I have made it a point to visit there when I'm visiting the country, because it's beautiful, and I've learned a lot. And I think, maybe that's it, just a little bit of the difference between going somewhere familiar and not really studying or appreciating, just being, and then going somewhere unknown or feels unknown. You do a little bit more, or maybe I should say I do a little bit more of the academic stuff. So this is in Northern Ireland, County Antrim. Again, you can drive right up to the visitor center. I hope I made the point that the visitor centers, whether it's at Cliffs of Moher, Newgrange, Giant's Causeway, or anywhere you go, always really a tremendous amount of infrastructure is new and has been, tourism is extremely important. I think it counts for 18% of the Irish economy. It's a huge employer. And so over these years, as the country has grown more prosperous because of the European Union, and all of the businesses that have gone to Ireland because of, well, it's an English speaking country, because the education of young Irish students is pretty much known to be the best in Europe. Many companies have made their headquarters in Ireland, and so it's really brought a lot of prosperity, which has made a huge difference in the visitor centers, the kinds of interpretive programs that are available. And but again, I think for Giant's Causeway, you walk right in. You don't even, because it's all outside, you just hike around there with no worries. If you want a more interpretive or a guided visit, a reservation would be suggested. Again, this is another easy day trip from Dublin or Belfast. I think the plug I wanted to make about the visitor center, very nice to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in them. They somehow they have a nice, the taking of tea, the sitting of refreshments with an actual cup and a saucer is still very much available in Europe and definitely in Ireland. And I never miss the chance to sit in one of those cafes and have a meal or a beverage. It's a little insider tip. Okay, so this is unlike Newgrange, right, which is a archaeological site. This is a geological site. And so this very interesting formation of hexagonal and stones, right? So I'm reading from my notes now because this does not come, it's not at the tip of my tongue. Basaltic lava. It's an eruption to the sea. The sea cooled the basalt, and you'll see that these columns that they formed millions of years ago as a result of hot lava flowing into the ocean. Of course, as you look at kind of how distinctive they are and the sorts of formations, I mean, look at that. Isn't that a playground any one of us would love to have, just climbing and you're right there at the North Atlantic coast. Of course, the folk tale is that the giants constructed this to wade across the North Atlantic from Scotland to Ireland. I personally like visiting there just because I love being outside. I live in Chicago. I come from a big city. So when I'm making decisions, I often prefer to be in nature and prefer to be appreciating the landscape of where I am. And so the Giant's Causeway, pretty remarkable place to hang out. And again, this was a lovely day. This is about 5 years ago. It was very popular and yet not crowded because it's part of the North Antrim coast. And so there's a lot of tourism there, but it's also somewhat isolated. And so that's the website. I have another video that I'm not going to try to play. Sorry, but it's also from National Geographic. It is also only about 2 minutes. I got a real kick out of looking at the headlines. Notice it's the BBC. We are in Northern Ireland, and this is an article just from yesterday about some drone survey trying to assess population, and the columns of the Giant's Causeway were counted as people, and there was all kinds of confusion. How could this be? Where did all these people come from? So okay. I don't know how you feel about AI, but I'm okay finding it's false. All right. Again, that's a little bit of a close-up of these very distinctive columns. Again, millions, I wish I had exact dates for you. And maybe sometime, maybe I don't, though. If I wanted them, I could have gotten them, right? I just think it's a remarkable example of how nature, I think I mentioned earlier how I'm a camper, and one of my favorite places is Sleeping Bear Dunes up in Michigan. where the story is told. It's a Native American story about the mother bear and two baby bears. It's kind of a brutal story. So this idea that we can connect with ancient people, with ancestors, with our humanity by looking in nature and then seeing how to protect a place that invites so much reflection and so much introspection. It's just a wandering around. Yeah, you could stay there all day, just wandering around. If it's a beautiful day, it's wonderful, wonderful to hang out there. Okay, now I'm taking a little break, taking a breath. This is my husband, and well, on one of our trips, he was in a big Game of Thrones fever, and so somehow, without really intending to, we accidentally found our way to some funny and interesting places. So if you are a Game of Thrones fan, or if you ever wondered about how that beautiful scenery looks through the lens of a big blockbuster like Game of Thrones, this is our bonus. I'm going to go very quickly through these. Northern Ireland, this is Belfast. This is the Titanic Museum. Again, really, I found it as a museum goer, as someone, who has, one of the great museum cities of the world right here in Chicago. I found this, not just the architectural decision making, but the actual, the exhibits and the story told about Ireland, specifically in the trade, in the development of these big, massive ocean liners, the relationship between the population and how important this industry, this shipbuilding industry, was to the north of Ireland, and how it changed the economy, really, of that part of the country, that part of the island. This is in the inside. It's not a great photo, but I found the museum memorable because it tried to tell the story of the working class people in the industry, and even all of the different related professions that contributed to the building of the Titanic. And of course, there's a lot more to the story of the Titanic, but that part, the way this museum represented the ordinary person in ways that were respectful and honest, in a place where history can sometimes be very conflicted. So Belfast, highly recommend. This is just that map of the Game of Thrones. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it in case we have some fans, but we found ourselves easily then, once we realized where we were, we just kind of followed these X's. And here's some of the landscape of Game of Thrones. Caves and shores, and then there is even, we had a very enjoyable excursion to Ballintoy, and what rolled up was a tour bus with some enactment of Games of Thrones. So here are people who decided, they weren't just going to drive around and take pictures and look, they were actually going to do the thing. So, but what a charming, you can imagine that just accidentally, we didn't plan to go to Ballintoy, but it's definitely scenic. All right, and then you may recognize this if you're a Game of Thrones fan. If not, this is specifically, I did do a little homework here. This is coppicing. These are beech trees. And so when they, in order to get some firewood, but the tree would not be destroyed, it would be woven here in this kind of canopy, so that the harvesting of the firewood, but also the protection of the tree, created this kind of really magical Avenue. All right, everybody good? I'm going to take a breath and introduce you now. We're moving across. So if you think about the map, and we started, when you fly from Chicago, you typically fly to Dublin. When I was a girl, we flew to Shannon, which is southwest coast, the city of Limerick. And then if we would drive right up the west coast through Galway to get to Achill. For any number of reasons, most flights from Chicago go to Dublin. And so anyone planning a trip, if they were asking me a question, the first thing I might ask them is that, what airport are you flying into? And then how long are you going? And what do you want? What's important to you? So Achill obviously is important to me, but I'm going to tell you, it is important to others too. I mean, this quiet little place out of the way, I always say to my husband, all roads lead to Achill. And he said, Helen, just make sure you say, no, that's one road. Okay, because that's one road. And boy, once you get there, you know, one of the reasons sometimes by the time I get there, especially driving and some of the challenges of driving when you're right off the plane, I decide, oh, I don't have to go anywhere else. I'm happy here. There's so much for me. But really, I hope you've seen that from Dublin, it's easy to get into Belfast. It's easy to come up here into this coast. Highly recommended. Where do most people, when they talk about visiting Ireland and doing a tour, they usually, this is the Ring of Kerry, this is the Dingle Peninsula, so most of the time, people kind of make this route. And it's lovely, and I invite me to do another travelogue and I'll talk about that. But really, I thought the best use of our time today would be to look at some other locations. This is Galway, obviously the major city of the West Coast, and the Cliffs of Moher are in here. So if you're coming out, and again, many people do, but what's happened on the West Coast, and again, with all of the improvements of the infrastructure of the roads and the prosperity of the country, more and more visitors come to Achill, and I hope you'll be able to see why. So Achill is the largest island off the coast of Ireland, and it is the bridge. This is the bridge. This is not a good picture of it, but it is a bridge that brings everybody onto the island. So when my husband says there's just one road to Achill, this is it. And the roads coming into the island are very narrow. And you kind of have to have nerves of steel personally, but there are other ways to get there besides driving yourself. There is also rail transportation from Dublin to Westport. There's a wonderful bus from the Dublin airport that you would change in Castlebar, which is the capital of Mayo, if we want to say that. So you don't have to drive, but another thing people say is there are more sheep on the island of Achill than there are people. I can't disagree. Achill is famous for these black-faced sheep. Achill is also, if you would partake in the eating of lamb, Achill lamb is renowned. So much about the agriculture, the other things, of course, that are produced there, lots of seafood. But, again, the agriculture, all those decisions, those commercial decisions, those really have changed over time with the European Union and all of the different ways that farmers, agricultural producers respect the economy of Europe, of which they are a part. But yes, the sheep are everywhere, and sometimes it's not a happy thing for people. This is the actual tourism map, and so you can see this is the bridge. This whole peninsula is Achill, but this is the island itself right here. Achill tourism, extremely helpful and available, and has done so much to promote the island that it is even a challenge once in a while to think, are they promoting it too well? Is it too well served? This is coming into the what we call Achill Sound. This would be the main village of the island right after you cross the bridge. This is a great story. McLaughlin's Pub in Achill, right there in the Sound. And again, last year there was a huge promotion because Mr. McLaughlin, who's been, and I can't play the video, but I hope you look it up. He has to retire, and so Heineken is helping him give the bar away, give the pub away, and it's a lovely place, to another McLaughlin who could come from anywhere in the world to take over this well-established, very charming pub right there in Achill Sound. And sorry, my heart is a little broken that these videos aren't coming across in your audio. So maybe there's a way to look it up at some point, but I know I'm running short on time. I've shown you this image before. This is the village of Dugert in Achill. This is my grandparents' house, now my uncle's and cousin's house. These also built after my uncle's homes. This is a hotel. This is one of the beautiful blue flag beaches. So Europe, again, part of the European Union, is all kinds of conservation and environmental incentives. And so the blue flag beach goes through many assessments in order to earn that standing. And Achill, small island that it is, has 5 blue flag beaches. This is the one we grew up on, Dugert Beach. This is the village of Dugert. I couldn't resist a double rainbow. It really does happen. This would be the beach, the road parallel to the beach. That's the village itself where my aunt and cousins live. And so this is there are 2 villages. There are many villages in Achill, but my family, my mom is from Dugert. Her last name, Vesey, V-E-S-E-Y, may not immediately seem Irish to you. And my dad, of course, from Bunnacurry, Gallagher, as I say it, Gallagher, as they say it. Always interesting when somebody tells me that I'm saying my name wrong. So many things now that, as I mentioned, Achill's become such a destination. These are my nieces. A few years ago, they were kayaking. This is something that we all have started to enjoy, which is Scollachla. Also, Achill is a Gaelic-speaking region and has done a lot to promote the music, the language, the traditions of the Irish. And so this is my niece. She and I, last summer, it was the 40th anniversary of Scollachla. And again, it's a summer school. It's the last week of July before the August bank holiday. And the island just comes into its own with many people staying to take courses in basket weaving, or some of the different, this is the bodhran, the traditional drum. All over the island during that week, there are recitals. These would be students learning their tin whistle and playing with their teachers. I took the writing workshop last year with my niece, and it was remarkable. One of the best experiences of my life, because, well, not only the fellow students, but the teacher, the instructor, was a renowned poet in Ireland, because Scollachla has a reputation of, doing very important work to maintain and develop the culture of the language and the music. It attracts quite a accomplished group of artists. Uh, at night on the beach, notice there's a lot of, so where do you stay on Achill? You can rent a house, you can stay with a relative, or there's quite a lot of camping because so many people come for the ocean sports, whether it's sailing, surfing, very popular, kayaking. This was a great kite festival that was there near the campground last summer. This is just to remind us that, so much of the industry now is corporate. There are still fishermen who go out. There are oyster farms and salmon farms, but this is my dad's village, and the tide is out, of course, and these are the lobster pots, and this is a working community, people making their living going out fishing, an industry that's gotten really amazing feat in the past few years is sea salt. The Achill sea salt factory is a important and busy place on the island. Here's the cousins climbing. And when I was there last summer, this is Kimbay. This is one of the blue flag beaches, and it's quite challenging. I'm not sure if you can see how hard these roads are, but imagine this. This has been named one of the, I think I have the headline, one of the best beaches in the world, which happened last July through some index that everybody's worried that now we'll have mobs of people. Where will they all go? I'm not sure that that's realistically a problem, but I hope you go. I hope you get to see Kimbay. Now, I'm going to wrap up because I know that I'm using a lot of our time. This is, when I thought about Newgrange and I thought about Giant's Causeway, I thought about archaeology and geology, or the geographic parts of and Achill tells that whole story. This is a deserted village, also unknown, some of the history of it. It's certainly not, it's last 2 centuries, it's not millennia ago, but it's a working archaeological site, continuing to try to understand what we can't see. That's in the challenge of Ireland, of course, the Cliffs of Moher, when you go there, people will tell you, oh, they're eroding. So you have this very interesting landscape that is subjected to a lot of fierce weather and a lot of, not the fierce history, but the fierce weather together. Lots of things continually being discovered and celebrated that were previously not. Sorry. Okay, I'm wrapping up here. So there's time for questions. That's the deserted village. We know that that's a place where the villagers on the island took their cattle for the summer. And then for some reason, the village was abandoned, let's say about 150 years ago, and slowly but surely people are trying to piece the story together. And a trail has been kind of developed, walking trails for the Wild Atlantic Way and the Greenway, all of these initiatives that make it easier for people who don't know anyone and don't have relatives and didn't grow up there to visit and make sense. And in Achill, one of the celebrities is Heinrich Böll, the Nobel Prize winning novelist, and he had a house and on Achill, and he had great affection. One of the resources that I always would recommend is his Irish journal. Not only is it funny, it's also quite poignant, and it even makes the point that I've been trying to, I hope, convey, which is we don't have to. What stories do we tell about where we are and how we got there and what we know and what we don't know and what we want to know and how we could possibly find that out. So this is newly installed. This then is what a human habitation looks like when it has been left in peace after death. And this is specifically related to that deserted village that was previously used as a summer grazing area. And then for reasons, nobody knows, it was abandoned. And now it's become a very robust archaeological site. This Achill Island continues to have interest. The archaeologists work really hard there, and you see them in the summer schools separate from Skolaka. I think I'm going to wrap up. I think I need to. What else would I? This is the Heinrich Boll House. This is information. There's a wonderful weekend. I'm planning my next trip to be there in May of 2027 for a celebration of Heinrich Boll. It's a weekend of lectures and opportunities to appreciate that relationship between the novelist and the place. If you want to visit Achill, I still have a lot of family. I was going to do a little promo for them, the Monastery View B&B, the Amethyst Bar. This is my cousin Mary, who works for Achill Tourism. This is what it looked like this morning when the pipe bands were marching and going all over the island to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. And this is just me wrapping up. I don't know how much time there is for questions. I put my email at the bottom. I guess, Joe, I'm turning it back to you. I feel like it's been a marathon.
Yeah. No, thank you, Helen. That was a wonderful presentation. I've been there twice now, so it's always interesting to see. I did go to Achill Island in 2022. It was very, very windy, I remember. So almost got knocked over. I forget the name of the town, but it was really a wonderful, wonderful country. So we do have some questions here. The first one is, let's see. The Newgrange site looks super interesting. Are there connections between Stonehenge and Newgrange? Were they constructed around the same time in history and or by similar people?
Okay, I am not exactly the best person to. I know there are some, but again, I guess when I say I don't know, I would honestly say I really don't know, but I don't know if those stories are they're in development. I mean, you have to realize that I don't know exactly when Newgrange got excavated, but it's very recent. I mean, I'm 68 years old, and I would say it's in my lifetime and in my later lifetime, because growing up, it was nothing I heard about. It was invisible. And when it became visible, and then the magnitude of it is just being uncovered. And so, yes, there are certainly, there's a lot more, there are a lot of people who could give you great answers to that, but I'm not one of them. And I think they would. It's even a question of who were these people, right? We know they were built by humans. Who were they? Pre-Celts, right? Well, what does that mean, pre-Celts? And then you get into an entire, dissertation on something that, again, one day I may have those answers. I wish I had them, but I'd say there's certainly a similarity.
Right. Yeah. Well, they both got the solstice connection, right? Where I think the sun aligns with Stonehenge, if I'm not mistaken, and you mentioned it with Newgrange. So. Anyway, next question is, does a bus go from Castlebar to Achill Island?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Yes. And in fact, if you want to go to Achill, I would say that bus is your route. There is no train to Achill. And the thing about planning a trip to Achill, I would say you would definitely want to stay there. If you thought you would go there for a day and turn around and leave, all you're really doing is driving. And I can't emphasize the decision making about drive. I mean, if you decide to drive, that's a big deal. Many people would say, I'm not going to drive. Okay, so then I have to use the public transportation. No problem. But I would also encourage any kind of tour or any kind of organized few days because it takes a lot of pressure off getting from point A to point B. But yes, Castlebar is your Castlebar is the place, or Westport or Castlebar, but Castlebar is bigger and has more amenities for tourists, for transportation, not for tourists, but for transportation.
Yeah. When I stayed in Westport and we drove out for the day and it was probably took like 4 hours out of our day just driving around the whole time. So but it was worth it for sure. Okay, next question was how cold is that beach water? Which I think was a I'm sure it's freezing, I'd imagine.
Well, again, and it could be, it's a pretty wild place. You're talking about the most western exposed between, the Atlantic and whatever, is blowing that way.
Correct.
It's always funny, like you don't see a lot of beautiful gardens in Achill. If you do, they're protected behind a stone wall, and they're because anything will just, be attacked by the wind. So
Mhm.
it's a pretty windswept place, not as cultivated, as some of the East Coast, the Dublin, those towns, beautiful flowers and gardens extraordinaire. But Achill's a bit more rough and ready. How cold is the water? Well, most people wear wets, so wetsuits would be something that are easily available, easily rented. Doesn't seem to stop. I mean, I did that Skolakla writing class, and we were right on the beach. And at lunch, people, Irish, not Americans, they would go right out and do their swim. Didn't matter what the weather was. So they do a lot of open swimming if if they
Yeah.
are living there. Those of us from the US, we tend to want a wetsuit.
Yeah. Well, hey, they're used to it, so um yeah, what you're saying, we have another question here about the kind of the rugged landscape. Someone asked, they said the island looks volcanic. Are there any active volcanoes or concerns about volcanoes in the area?
Not to my knowledge, those would be way, way pre Giants Cause, even up near the Giants Causeway. No, no,
Yeah.
that would millennia, millions of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember hearing or reading somewhere that the west side of Ireland is just a little more there's a lot more hills and it's a little more tough to grow crops there and that sort of thing. But there were a lot of sheep over there. So
And seafood,
oh
a
yeah.
lot of that very important seafood industry on the West Coast.
Yeah, definitely. Um, okay, it looks like that's all the questions we have. So, Helen, thanks again so much for presenting. It was outstanding, and thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We hope you enjoyed it, especially given the St. Patrick's Day connection here. So, everyone, have a good rest of your day. Thanks again, Helen, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.